Hello and welcome back to 53 Stitches. My name is Claire and I'm the creator behind all of the crochet goodies that you see on this channel. Today we're going to be making the super cute little no-sew chunky duck. His beak is made while we crochet all of our stitches in the round, as well as his little feet, and our little wings are picked up stitches at the end, so there is no need to sew on any body pieces or anything like that. He's made up of pretty simple stitches, and hopefully it will be a really easy tutorial for you to follow along with. So the materials that you're going to need are, I have a 5mm crochet hook here. We have a yarn needle just for weaving in the ends and closing the piece. We have 10mm safety eyes, as well as the washers that help them stay in place. And I have a bunch of different stitch markers in different colors to help us find our place, because chunky yarn can be a little bit trickier to see what's going on. I have a pair of scissors. I have some polyester fiber fill when we need to stuff the duck later. And last but not least, we have the yarn that we're using today. So I have Hobbie's Baby Snuggle here, which is a yarn that is 120 meters or 131 yards per 100 grams. There are a few different brands that fit those measurements, and you can swap and change them pretty easily. But luckily, all of the color palette we need today comes in the Baby Snuggle range, and I'll have the exact ones linked in the description box below. But we have the 06 Aquamarine color, the 01 White, the 08 Teddy Bear, 37 Sunshine, and 25 Burnt Orange. Now these two are pretty similar colors. I like to just have a slight difference between the beak and the feet for mine, just because that's kind of how ducks are in real life. You could use the same color for both the beak and the feet if you don't want to have to buy another color. So let's get started. You're going to want to grab your aquamarine yarn to start with, and the first thing we're going to do is create a slip knot. So I like to create this sort of arch shape, and then you want to grab the top of that arch and twist it so that you have your yarn crossing over like this. Then you can pinch the point at which they meet, reach through the loop and grab the working yarn, which is the yarn that's still attached to your ball, and then you can pull the tail end of the yarn to close that. You can insert your crochet hook into this big loop and then pull on the working yarn while pinching the little knot to close that slip knot up. Until it sits on your crochet hook, and it doesn't need to be super tight, just enough so that you've got one loop on your crochet hook. There's the tail end of your yarn over here, and the working end still attached to the ball, and that is your slip knot. Now for the first round of the duck, we are going to chain 2, and then we're going to work 6 single crochets into the second chain from the hook. So if you haven't heard that expression before, I'll show you what it means. To start with, we're actually going to add a stitch marker to the loop that's on our hook currently. So you just want to insert your stitch marker so that it sits alongside your crochet hook, and then close it. And then you can chain 1. So to chain, you wrap your yarn around your hook, that's called a yarn over, and then you draw it through the loop that's on your crochet hook. And that is 1 chain complete. You can see that our orange stitch marker there is helping us find that very first chain. We're going to do the same steps. So add a stitch marker so that we know where our second chain is. And then yarn over and draw through the loop on our crochet hook. So that is our second chain. So we've done the chain 2 part of the first step, and we are interested in the second chain from the hook. So our pink stitch marker marks the first chain from the hook, and the orange one is our second chain from our hook, also the first chain that we made. So what you want to do is you're going to take your crochet hook and insert it underneath a loop of that first chain, so where the stitch marker marks. Then you're going to yarn over the same way that we did for the chain, draw it through that loop so that you now have 2 loops on your hook. And then you're going to yarn over again and draw through both of those loops. So we have just finished our first single crochet. So I'm going to take the pink stitch marker off, and I'm actually going to insert it underneath the loops of that single crochet that we just created. I'm going to just remove this crochet hook to get it out of the way. So it can be a bit tricky to see with chenille yarn, but there is a V here of the first single crochet that we created. So I'm going to insert my stitch marker underneath both of those loops of that V, and that is our first single crochet that we created. We will need to know where that is when we want to start round 2. And I'm going to put my crochet hook back on the loop and close that up. So we've done the first single crochet in round 1, and we need to do 5 more single crochets into that same stitch that's marked by our orange stitch marker. So for your second single crochet, you want to insert your crochet hook into the stitch that's marked by the orange marker, yarn over, that's wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it back through that loop. You now have 2 loops on your crochet hook. You want to yarn over and draw through both of those loops, and that's your second single crochet. And again, you insert your crochet hook into where the orange stitch marker marks, yarn over and pull through. 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and draw through. That's 3 stitch marks. That's 3 single crochets. Now it can be really tricky to see your stitches with chenille yarn, so if you need to, feel free to add stitch markers underneath each of those stitches so that you know how to find them for round 2. There is no such thing as too many stitch markers. So we've done 1, 2, 3. We need to do 3 more single crochets. So insert your stitch marker, yarn over, draw through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and draw through both loops. And all of these stitch markers can be a bit of a pain to work around, but they make it really easy to see what you're doing. And let's do our 5th one. Yarn over, yarn over. And then the last single crochet in this round, back into the spot that the orange stitch marker marks, yarn over, draw through, yarn over, and draw through both of those loops. So that is the 6 single crochets that make up our first round. We're going to take the orange stitch marker out now because we don't need it anymore. And you can see that I have this kind of loosey-goosey loop here. This is actually the chain, the second chain that we did, that we skipped. And that one always kind of pokes out for me a little bit. You can kind of just push it out of the way and it will disappear as we keep crocheting. So that is our first round done. We have 6 single crochets in the round. And for our second round, we're actually going to do an increase in each stitch. So an increase is 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. So the very first stitch of our round is this one that we added a pink stitch marker to. So you want to insert your crochet hook underneath both loops of that stitch the same way that the stitch marker has shown. And then you want to yarn over, draw through. You have 2 loops on your hook just as before, yarn over and draw through both of those loops. And that is the first single crochet of our increase done. We're going to add a stitch marker to mark the beginning of our round. So underneath both loops of the stitch that we just created. And then we are ready to do the second single crochet of our increase. So it's done in the same stitch, which means we work back into that same stitch that's marked by the pink stitch marker, yarn over, draw through. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and draw through both loops. So we've now done 2 single crochets into the same stitch, and that's our first increase. We can remove the pink stitch marker now. And then we have an increase in every single stitch of this round, which means that we're going to do 2 single crochets into the stitch marked by the green marker, 2 into the one marked by the yellow marker, and the 3 stitches that we didn't add markers to. So insert into the next stitch, yarn over, draw through, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, draw through both of those loops. That's our first single crochet, and then back into the same stitch for our second single crochet of the increase. And then we'll remove that stitch marker, and that is our second increase done. So we have 4 stitches that we've done now so far since the start of the round. And at the end of this round, we'll end up with 12 stitches because we've added 6 stitches from our first round. I'll do the rest of this round now and meet you at the end, so an increase in every stitch. Okay, so we're at the end of round 2 now, which means that we should have 12 stitches in our round. And chenille stitches can be really tricky to see because the yarn is so chunky and squishy, but you can kind of feel your stitches. So the first one's easy to find because we did mark it, and you can kind of use it to get a feel for how it is that the rest of those stitches should feel, and you can kind of go along and find the sort of area that there is a gap or it feels like there's a gap. And that can kind of help you find your way if you're struggling with finding your stitches with this chunky kind of yarn. But again, there's no such thing as too many stitch markers, so feel free to use as many as you need. Okay, so we're ready to start round 3 now, and we're going to be adding 6 stitches again, but because we have 12 stitches in our round currently, that means we'll split up the increases with a single crochet in between. So the pattern that we're going to be doing is an increase in the first stitch, then a single crochet, an increase, a single crochet, and we'll keep repeating that all the way around until we reach the end of our round. So our first stitch is going to be worked into that stitch that's marked by the stitch marker, but I'm actually going to move it out of the way just because it is a little bit easier to work into those stitches when the marker is gone. But we'll insert our crochet hook into where the marker had been, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. That's the first single crochet of our increase. And then we'll do a second one in the same stitch, and that's our increase complete. And before I forget, we will put that stitch marker back on the first stitch of the increase that we did so that we know where the start of our round is. And so we've done an increase for the first stitch, and then our next stitch is going to be a single crochet. So for this one, just as we have before, we'll do a single crochet and then we're ready to move on to the next stitch. So the next one will be another increase, which is 2 in the same stitch. And then a single crochet, and then an increase, and a single crochet. And you'll see the pattern by now. And you just keep doing that until you have reached the end of your round. And we'll have gone from 12 stitches in the round to 18. So at the end of round 3, you'll have 18 stitches. And there we are, that is the end of round 3. So for round 4, again, we're adding 6 stitches, but because we have 18 this time, it means that there are 2 single crochets between our stitches. And I like to stagger my increases, which just makes sure they don't sit on top of each other and create sort of a hexagonal shape. I have a whole video on that, which I will link in the description below if you're interested in learning more. But what it means is the pattern that we'll follow is a single crochet in the first stitch, an increase in the next one, and then a single crochet, and then we'll repeat those stitches all the way around the loop. So another single crochet, increase, single crochet, single crochet, increase, single crochet, until we reach the end. So start with a single crochet, replace your stitch marker, and then an increase. So 2 in the same stitch. And then a single crochet, and that's our 3 stitch repeat. So we'll start the repeat again. A single crochet in the next stitch, an increase, and a single crochet, and then repeat those 3 all the way around. And that is the end of round 4. So we now have 24 stitches in our round. And round 5 is a nice easy one. You're just going to do a single crochet in every stitch all the way around. So let's do that. And that is the end of round 5. You'll still have 24 stitches in the round because we didn't have any increases in this one. You can kind of see that the work starts to curve when you stop adding those increases. It starts to kind of form the bowl shape. And one little tip to make sure that you have the right side of your stitches on the outside of your work is that your noodle goes in the bowl. So the tail that you started with should be on the inside of your work. You can kind of tuck it away in there out of the way. For round 6, we're actually going to be working the beak as part of this round. So you want to get your yellow yarn ready. And to start with, we're going to do 11 single crochets in the green color. So we'll start with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And there are actually 12 stitches that we'll do in that green color, but I just wanted to stop at 11 to show you how to change colors for the beak. So grab your yellow yarn, and we're going to start the single crochet the same way that we normally would. So insert your crochet hook into the next stitch, yarn over in the green and pull it through. You have 2 loops on your hook, and instead of yarning over with the green to finish the stitch, you're actually going to grab the yellow yarn, put it on the hook, and then draw it through both of those loops. And we've now changed to our yellow color. And you can tighten that up and tug on, hard to see, tug on the green stitch, not too hard, just a little bit, just to tighten that a tiny bit. And then I'm also actually going to tie a knot between this yellow and green color here, just to help keep it all in place. This beak requires a little bit of fiddling just to make sure that your stitches stay where you want them to sit. So to start the beak, we're going to start with a slip stitch, but all of the stitches that we're going to do in the beak are going to be worked in the front loop only of the next stitch. So each stitch is made up of 2 little bars that kind of form the V when you look at it sideways. And the front loop, you get my needle here to help demonstrate. So it's got a front loop here and a back loop, which makes up the stitch. We're going to insert our crochet hook underneath the front loop only of that next stitch instead of under both loops like we usually would. So grab your crochet hook and insert it underneath the front loop only of that next stitch. And you're going to yarn over in the yellow and pull it through. And we're actually going to pull that loop that we've just pulled through that front loop only stitch through the second loop that's on the hook. So basically we're doing a slip stitch there. And that is the first stitch of our little beak. So that is the start of our little beak there. Then we're going to chain 2 just like we did when we started our first round. So yarn over and pull through the loop on the hook, that's 1 chain. Yarn over and pull through again, that's the second chain. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets back into that same stitch that we slipped into. So if you've never done a double crochet before, you want to yarn over before you do anything else, and then insert your crochet hook underneath that front loop only. So the same place we went into before, yarn over again and pull it through. For a double crochet, you have 3 loops on your hook. You want to yarn over, draw through 2 of those loops. You have 2 loops on your hook now, and you want to yarn over again and draw through those final 2. So that's 1 double crochet that we've done, and we're going to do a second one of those back into that same front loop only stitch. So it's getting busy in there. So yarn over, insert back into that same spot, yarn over again and pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2 of those loops. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through those last 2, and that's our second double crochet finished in that same stitch. And then we're almost done. Then we're going to chain 2 again. So yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook, yarn over, pull through again. We're basically mirroring what we did at the start, and then we're going to slip stitch back into that very same stitch that we've worked all the rest of these into. But because we want to change back to green for our next stitch, we're actually going to slip with the green that we still have attached to our duck here. So you want to put that yellow thread back here and just hold it with your finger. Grab the green thread that we still have attached, put that on your hook, yarn over with the green, and then draw through. And then you can draw straight through the yellow that was already on there. And so that is our beak complete. It can be a bit tricky because there's a lot going on. And the rest of the stitches in the round are all a single crochet. So I'm going to go and finish the single crochets for all of the round. So the next one goes in here and I'll just single crochet as usual. So that's 1, 2, there should be 11 stitches left in the round. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And I'm just going to move my stitch marker to the start of the round again. And then I'll just take my crochet hook out while we come back and we fiddle with the threads that we've got left here just to make this beak a little bit neater. So you can kind of see how it's going, but we do have this little stitch that's sort of poking out. You can grab the yarn, the yellow yarn that's still attached to the ball, and sort of pull that a little bit. And that should help tidy it up a little. So that's made it a little bit tighter. And same with this one over here. And that sort of tidies up that beak a little bit. And then I like to cut my yellow yarn and then just knot the two of these together so that it all stays nice and secure and neat and tidy. And that is how our little beak is looking without having to do any sewing. It's all worked in the round. And now we can continue with round 7. You're all finished with the yellow yarn now, so you can put that one away. And for round 7, we're going to do a single crochet in each stitch of the round, but when we get to where we made the beak, there will be a little bit of a difference. So we'll do the first 12 single crochets until we reach the beak. Okay, so that's the 12th single crochet. And then the next single crochet, we don't actually want to do into any of the stitches that we did as part of the beak. We're going to work into the back loop of the stitch that we worked the front loop of in the last round. So we're basically dropping down around. It can be really tricky to see because of everything that is going on in this scenario. So you can usually feel with your crochet hook where you need to go, but feel free to add a stitch marker. I probably should have mentioned that before, but when you're making the beak, feel free to add a stitch marker to the back loop to make it easier to find for this part. So you insert your crochet hook into the back loop of the stitch from last round, and then yarn over and draw through, do your single crochet as usual. And there you are. Now you can continue working as you normally would into the remaining 11 stitches in the round, which should all just have a single crochet in them. And this gives you a really nice, neat, closed up beak where all of the tails and everything are on the inside, and it's all the same height. You can see kind of the slight divot that it has from working into a row that's one under, but that all sort of works itself out as you go. And it's a really nice tidy way to make that beak. So So we'll finish off the row by doing a single crochet in all of the remaining stitches, but we're going to be doing a row in white for the next one. So for the very last stitch, don't finish the second yarn over. So I'm on the last stitch of the round now, and because I want to swap to white, all I'm going to do is insert my crochet hook, yarn over once, and then I'm going to get my white yarn and finish that second yarn over in the new color. And that one just got a little bit loose there, so I'll tighten it. Okay. And so now I'm ready to work row 8, which is where we will start setting up for our wings later on. So the first stitch of the round, we're going to do a slip stitch. So yarn over, draw through, and instead of yarning over again, you just want to draw that straight through the loop that's on our hook. And the reason that we're doing a slip stitch there is just to make that color change a little bit smoother. It makes a small difference, but I like the way that it looks. And we can also cut our green yarn at this point because we are finished with it. So the next 4 stitches are just going to be regular single crochets. And like we did with the beak, the next 3 stitches are going to be single crochets that we only work into the front loop. So I'm actually going to mark the back loop of these stitches this time. So we have the front loop here, that's where we're going to insert our crochet hook, and we have the back loop here, which is what I'm going to put the stitch marker on. And I'll do that for all 3 of the next stitches. And for those 3 stitches, we'll do our single crochets in the front loop only. So under the front loop, yarn over, draw through, and then finish our single crochet. And again. Stitch markers make it a bit slippery. And then our third one. So these stitches are what's going to become our wings later. And then we're going to do 9 single crochets. So the next 9 stitches will have a single crochet in them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then the next 3 stitches are also worked into the front loop only. And I won't mark these ones, and then we can kind of see the difference between marking them and not marking them. So that's 3 in the front loop only, and then you should have 4 stitches left in your round, and those will all be a single crochet. And on the last stitch, once again, we're going to change to a new color. So the stitch marker did something funny because we started the round with a slip stitch. So I'll insert, yarn over in white, and then we're going to switch to brown to finish that last yarn over to change to the new color. And I'm going to cut the white and I'm actually going to tie those 2 together to keep them secure. And I'm also going to tie the brown to that other white strand. Actually, no. I'm going to tie the brown and the teal together from our last color change, just to make everything nice and secure. And it helps keep the color changes neat as well. And we can get the white yarn out of here because we are finished with it now. And we're ready to start round 9. So I'm going to start this one with a slip stitch again, just to help neaten that color change. And then we'll do the same thing. We start with 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're at the same part of the bird that we were before, where our next 3 stitches are the ones that we worked into the front loop only. And so on this round, similar to how we did for the beak, we're going to work into the back loop only of those green stitches from the last round. So we're basically skipping these 3 white stitches and instead working into the ones 1 row below. And we're going to work half double crochets into these back loops to help offset the height difference from working into 1 row under. So to start a half double crochet, it's pretty similar to a double crochet. You'll start by yarning over, and then we insert our crochet hook underneath that back loop of the stitch from the last round. So the same loop that our stitch marker is on, and we can remove the stitch marker. So we've yarned over, inserted into the back loop, then we'll yarn over again and draw it through that loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Now you're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of those loops. And that is a half double crochet complete. And you can see that there's a 1 white stitch that sort of pokes out a little bit. We're going to pick up our wings there after the rest of the bird is done. So we'll show you that later. And next we're going to do another half double crochet. Make sure you can see. We're going to do another half double crochet into the next stitch, so the one that the yellow stitch marker marks. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, draw through. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and draw through all 3 of those loops. You can remove the yellow stitch marker. And then the last one is to yarn over and insert into that back loop marked by the green stitch marker. And then finish the rest of our half double crochet. And then you can remove that marker. And then, like we did for last round, the next 9 stitches are going to be single crochets, just as you normally would. So we're going to do those as we typically would underneath both loops of the white yarn. So you'll have 1, 2, 3 stitches that we basically skipped because we worked 1 row below. And then you can finish off with your 9 regular single crochets. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then we've reached the same place on the opposite side of the duck. So we've reached the second wing, and we're going to do those half double crochets into the back, the half double crochets into the back loops. So it can be a little bit tricky to see, especially in fluffy yarn, especially if you're new to crochet. But you can kind of see there are these straight bars here that the other stitches don't have. So this one here has the V of a stitch that we worked through both loops, and then this one has a little bar. So that's how you can see those back loops that we've left open to work into. But if you're having trouble finding them, just use stitch markers. Makes it nice and easy. So we're going to yarn over. And I like to hold the yarn over because it tries to slip off my hook. Insert underneath that back loop and then finish off our half double crochet. And do that again for the next 2. And then our last 4 stitches are single crochets worked under both loops of the white stitches as normal. And I didn't put my stitch marker back for the round here, but it's nice and easy to find because it's where all of the color changes are. And I'll add that stitch marker back so we know where we're starting for future rounds. Okay, we're up to round 10 of our little duck now, and we're going to add some increases in again here so that we can create this sort of little duck butt shape. So we're going to add some increases to make him a little bit larger in the booty, and we'll also add some decreases to help kind of accentuate that curve in the front as well, to help add to that shape. So to start with, we're going to do an increase in the next 2 stitches. So we'll do the first increase, and then in the next stitch we'll do another increase. And then for the next 20 stitches, we're just going to do a single crochet in each stitch around. So there should be 2 stitches left in the round that you haven't worked into by the time you get to the end of these 20. Okay, and then in the last 2 stitches of the round, we're going to do increases again. So an increase in the second last stitch, and then an increase in the last stitch. So we've done 4 increases in total, bringing our total stitch count for this round up to 28. And now for our next round, we're going to do those decreases at the front of the duck that help create that slope. So the first 9 stitches are just going to be a regular single crochet. Okay, so I've just done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 single crochets, and our next stitch is going to be our first decrease. So to do a decrease, you're going to insert your crochet hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and draw through. And instead of yarning over and finishing the stitch like you would for a single crochet, you're going to insert into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Then yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. So we've just gone through 2 stitches, but we've only got 1 stitch remaining. So we've basically dropped 2 stitches down to 1, and that's our decrease. I usually do invisible decreases for my regular patterns, but I find them to be a bit of a pain to work in chenille yarn, so I just do chunkier decreases for the chunky yarn. But you can do whatever you prefer. And then we're going to do 7 regular single crochets in the next stitches. And 7, and then we're going to do another decrease. So into the next stitch, yarn over, and then straight into the stitch next to it, and then yarn over so that you've got those 3 loops on your hook, and then draw through all 3, and that's our decrease. And then for the remaining 8 stitches in the round, we're just going to do a single crochet in each of them. And that is the end of round 11. So before we start round 12 of the duck, we're just going to insert our safety eyes. So I like to insert them in the same row that the beak sits in. So you can kind of pull the beak to the side, grab one of your eyes, and then there's the stitch where the beak ends. You want to go 1, 2, over, and then you insert it into that little gap there. And then on the other side, you've got the line where the beak ends, and then I like to just go 1 space over on the other side because the beak is slightly off center, and I find that if it's 1 stitch away on this side and 2 stitches away on that side, that's actually where it looks the most even. And then once you're kind of happy with that positioning, because you can move them wherever your preference is, you can grab the safety backing and insert that until it makes that click. And then that way the eyes sit nice and securely. And then that's it. Your eyes are in. And we can continue with round 12 of the duck. So I'll put my crochet hook back on the loop there. And for round 12, we are going to be making the feet at the same time. So you've got your orange yarn ready to go for when we need it. So to start with, we're going to do a single crochet in the first 7 stitches. And then we're actually going to do a decrease for the next 2 stitches. So joining those 2 stitches into one. And then we'll do 2 single crochets, and on the second of those single crochets we're going to change to our orange color. So you only do the first yarn over, and then do the second yarn over in your new color. And now we are ready to make our popcorn stitches for the feet. Now to start a popcorn stitch, you're going to do 3 single crochets into the next stitch. So the same way that an increase is 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch, this time we're going to do 3 of them in the next stitch. So there's our first one, and our second, and then that's all 3 single crochets worked into the same stitch. And then you can open up that loop on your hook, and you'll take your crochet hook out from that loop. And you want to insert it underneath both loops of that first stitch that we did as part of our popcorn stitch. And luckily with these color changes, it's nice and easy to see. So you insert underneath both loops as if you were going to do a regular single crochet. Then you put your loop back on the hook, and you can pull it to tighten it again. So you've got these 2 loops on your hook now. And because we want our next stitches to be in brown, we're actually going to do the final yarn over to complete the popcorn stitch in the brown. So yarn over and draw through both of those loops on your hook, and that is your popcorn stitch complete. And it becomes a little bit more obvious after you finish the next round as well, but it pokes out a little bit more. So it creates this sort of little bubble that act as the feet for our duck. And then we're going to do a single crochet in the next 4 stitches until we do our second foot. So the next stitch can sometimes be a little bit tricky to find, so don't be afraid to use stitch markers, as I have said. So you're going to just do a single crochet as normal, and it helps to try and keep your hook behind that popcorn stitch or to poke it out afterwards, just to help it give that kind of popped out shape. That's the first one. And then we'll do the second, third, and fourth. Now we're ready to do our second yarn over in the gold, so I'll just cut it from that first foot. And then we'll do our second yarn over. And as before, we're going to do 3 single crochets into the next stitch, because we are doing a 3 single crochet popcorn stitch. And a popcorn stitch will usually say how many and what kind of stitches you're working into, because you can do it with more than 3, you can do it with double crochets, and so on. So you open up that loop, take your hook out, insert it underneath both the loops of that first stitch we did as part of it, put the loop back on the hook and pull it tight, and then we'll complete that yarn over in the brown, since that is the color of the next stitch. And then we'll do a single crochet in the next 2 stitches, making sure that we poke that popcorn foot out as we do the first one. So that's 1, 2. We're going to do our last decrease to get us back to the stitch count we had before we added the increases as part of the shaping. So that's a decrease, and then there should be 5 stitches left in the round, and all of them are going to be a single crochet. And that is the end of round 12 of our little duck. And you can move your stitch marker, and then I like to cut the orange because we are done with the orange now. And as we did with the other color changes, I also like to tie those 2 colors into a knot at the back, and it kind of helps that popcorn stitch pop, and it also just helps keep everything nice and tidy and uniform. And our duck is looking pretty good so far. We are ready to start doing the decreases to close up this hole, and then we will stuff him and do his wings, and then he will be good to go. All right, and we're ready to begin round 13. So we're going to be doing some decreases in this round to drop us from 24 stitches in the round to 16. So we're going to do a decrease across the first 2 stitches, then a single crochet. We're going to repeat that pattern, that 3-stitch repeat all the way around. So a decrease over 2 stitches and then a single crochet and then a decrease and a single crochet until we reach the end of the round. So we'll start with our decrease. And then a single crochet. And then we'll start the pattern again. So decrease and single crochet. Decrease, single crochet, and then our next decrease falls over where our popcorn stitch was. So we'll insert into the next stitch, yarn over, draw through, and then insert underneath the orange stitch from our popcorn stitch, yarn over and draw through. So it's the same decrease that it normally would be, but sometimes those stitches can look a little bit different because of the popcorn stitch. And then a single crochet. So we now have 16 stitches in our round. We've gone from 24 to 16. And then we have one more round where we'll do 8 decreases in a row. But before we do that, we are going to grab our stuffing and give our bird a little bit of shape. So I have some polyester fiber fill stuffing here. You can buy this at craft stores, or you can use old cushions and old pillows as a really good way to recycle it, because this is what they're filled with. And quite a lot can fit into this little bird. So I'm just going to start poking this stuff in there. And you'll see that it disappears down into quite a small shape. So I just shoved a whole bunch in there, but it's barely changed how our duck looks. So we'll just and the trick to stuffing is kind of to shape it as you go. So I'm filling up the head first and making sure that it kind of fills up the duck the way that I like it, and also that I'm not grabbing the posts of the safety eyes and changing the shape of them too much. So for example, if all of your stuffing comes from the sides, it will bend those posts inwards and your duck might start looking a little cross-eyed. Maybe that's what you're going for, but if you're not, be sure to make sure that you are putting some stuffing. So my finger is going up that way so that it goes in between the eyes and helps make sure there's stuffing in between them as well as on the sides, so that they stay nice and centered. He's looking a lot squishier and rounder, but he can fit a bit more. You generally want to put in enough stuffing so that your duck holds its shape and bounces back when you squeeze it, but not so much that you start getting holes between your stitches and you can see the stuffing in between. That is a little bit easier to avoid when you're using a squishy yarn because it tends to fill those spaces anyway, but it's still something to watch out for. It's a good idea just to shape him as you go so that you know you're getting the shape that you prefer. And I'm pretty happy with that level. He's nice and bouncy, he keeps his shape, and that's good for me. So we're ready to do our last round, and for the last round of the duck we're just going to do 8 decreases in a row. And I like to push the stuffing down as I'm working through those in those stitches, just to make sure that I don't catch any of the stuffing, and pull it up with my crochet hook. So we've got our first decrease, and I'll just keep doing 8 of them all the way around until I reach my stitch marker again. And I'm going to remove the stitch marker. I'm going to cut my yarn and leave enough of a tail that I can sew that little remaining hole closed. And then you can just pull your crochet hook out. And pull the yarn through until you have your little tail. And then we're going to close this last little hole here. So this is what you'll need your yarn needle for. This chenille yarn can shed quite a lot when you do this, so you just want to be as gentle as you can and patient. And you can always use an acrylic yarn or a wool yarn or a cotton thread to close this hole up, because the stitches will sort of disappear as you weave them through if your yarn is shedding too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our tail threaded onto our yarn needle, and then we're going to insert the yarn needle underneath the front loop only of the next stitch. So the same way that we did when we were working our wings and our beak, we'll go through the front loop from the outside to the inside, so the same way you would insert a crochet hook, and then just pull it like this, but you don't want to pull it too tightly. And we're going to do that in every stitch around. So there should be 8 stitches left, and we're just going to go through the front loop of all 8 stitches. And we're not pulling it tight just yet. Okay, so we've gone through all 8 stitches, and you can see that it's created this kind of weavy wreath, and then you just want to pull it, and that will close the hole. Now chenille yarn is tricky for this particular task, but that one's worked pretty well. And then you can weave it underneath a few stitches just to help hide that tail. And then I just go through the body, and the stuffing kind of helps keep it in place as well. And you can cut your yarn, take the back end of your needle, insert it through the body, and just kind of drag it back and forward until that tail disappears. And we have finished the body of the duck. All that's left is to add the wings. So we've got our 3 stitches here that were the ones that we worked in the front loop only. And you can insert your crochet hook underneath both loops of it as if you were going to do a regular single crochet in the round. And we're going to take our brown yarn and pick up the stitch that we need for the wing. So you can just put your yarn onto the hook like you would for a color change and draw it through. And so we've picked up 1 stitch, and we're going to do a chain, and then we're going to go back into that same stitch, so the first of those 3 stitches that make up the wing, and we're going to do a single crochet. And that is one little part of the wing. So then we're going to move on to the next stitch here, the middle one. We're going to do a half double crochet, a double crochet, and then another half double crochet into this same stitch. So we're doing 3 stitches into the same stitch, and they're kind of growing in height and then shrinking back down so that we get a kind of arch for the wing. So we'll start our half double crochet by yarning over, insert into the stitch, yarn over again, and then draw through all 3 loops on the hook to finish our half double crochet. And then the next stitch is going to be a double crochet back into that same stitch, so yarn over and then insert, yarn over, pull through. You've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, draw through 2 of those loops, and then yarn over and draw through the remaining 2. So that's our double crochet finished, and then we'll do 1 half double crochet back into that same stitch. And then we've got 1 stitch left in our wing, and we're basically going to mirror what we did on the other side. So the first stitch we'll work in is a single crochet, and then back in that same stitch we'll do a slip stitch, so yarn over, pull through, and then pull straight through the loop that's on your hook to finish. And then you can cut your yarn and pull that out. And that is our first little wing finished. And then you take your yarn needle, thread one of those tails onto the yarn needle, and then I like to follow the line of one of the stitches of the body, pull it tight, go straight back in, and then out just a random stitch in the body. Then you can cut that and do the same little trick we did when finishing it up. It usually leaves behind a little fluffy part that is just part of the shed. It's not actually a part of the leftover yarn. And then just do the same to the other side. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So you want to insert your crochet hook under the rightmost stitch from those ones that we did in the front loop only. Put the brown loop on your hook and pull it through. Chain one. And then do a single crochet back into that same stitch that you picked up from. Then in the middle stitch, we're going to work a half double crochet, double crochet, and then another half double crochet, and then in the last stitch, we're going to work a single crochet, and then a slip stitch to finish everything off. Then you can cut your yarn and hide your tails. And there you have it. Your little no-sew chunky duck is finished without having to sew any of the wings or the beak on. I had a lot of fun designing this one and especially trying to figure out how to do everything in one piece, so I hope that you guys enjoy the results and you learned a couple of techniques to try in your next projects. As part of this series, I also designed 11 other birds, so you can find a pattern download for all of these birds available on my Etsy, which I'll link below. And if you are interested in making this bird yourself but you don't know what materials and everything and where to find them, I also sell kits that include everything that you need, so you can find that on my Etsy store as well. I hope you had fun with the tutorial and let me know how you liked the style of it, or if you have any feedback about what kind of videos you'd like to see from me in the future. I'm trying to get more into the habit of creating these, so feel free to give it a thumbs up if you liked it. It really helps the video be found for other people who would benefit from this particular style of teaching. And if you want to see more from me, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.